We've just been joined in the studio this afternoon by a long-suffering opposition politician from Uganda, Kizza. Many thanks for coming to talk to us today here at Focus on Africa, sir.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
And look, your story is well known. You've been repeatedly arrested, most times brutally. You've been pepper sprayed. You've been tear gassed. You've been placed under house arrest, jailed for many, many months. Many people in your situation would have given up. What keeps you going?
Well, it's the objective for which this whole story started. This whole story started with me being brutalized, not for doing anything, but for simply expressing my choice in an electoral process. And even before that, I was brutalized for just walking the streets during the regime of Idi Amin. And so, although I had set out to be a medical doctor, I realized that I had no country. I was living in a country where anyone could choose to end my life or to torture me or to do whatever they wanted with me. In other words, I did not have a country I could call mine in which I had rights, in which I could decide on who leads my country or how I am led. And that is when I decided to join my colleagues who had taken up arms to actually fight to cause that change that would give us our citizenship back, and our rights back.
A number of them have actually lost their lives in that pursuit.
Yes, and the reason I continue is not only because that objective has not been met, but indeed many of my colleagues have laid down their lives in that struggle. So although I am suffering, yes, and I am only the most, maybe the more visible one, but many people pass through the same kind of situations that I pass through, only that they are not as visible as I am.
But you make it sound like some sort of death wish on your part.
No, it's not. It cannot be a death wish. Dead people never struggle. I do everything, certainly, to keep around and to fight another day. But the point I am making is that I made a choice that it's not worth it to live in a country as a slave, that I am better off, dying, doing something about it, than giving up and just living at the whims of some few people who monopolize power in our country. And so most of my adult life has been committed to this. I'm now just past my 60-year mark. So,
and haven't contested elections, 5 times already?
Yes, 4 times.
4 times?
Yes.
And looking to contest again?
Well, as I have pointed out, the struggle is not about me and being a leader, not at all. We use elections simply as an opportunity to advance our broad cause, a cause for regaining our power to decide in our country, to have a rule of law in Uganda, to have our rights and freedoms respected, and indeed to have a country where our resources are applied for the benefit of all equitably. So as long as these objectives are not met, it means that if I give up, not only will I live the remaining part of my years in a bad situation, but it means that I have condemned the younger people, our children, to suffer the kind of situation that we have suffered all these years.
Well, Mr. Besigye, you also have a responsibility to your own family. Your children, through no fault of theirs, have you as their father. You have a responsibility to them. Do they sometimes try to talk you out of all of this? They see their father being brutalized in the name of bringing about a change to this Uganda that he loves, putting country above them.
Yes, it's not an easy situation. Actually, one that I was very conscious of even before I started, especially in the latest phase where I started challenging the regime of Mr. Museveni. In the earlier phase, when I went to the bush and joined those who were fighting, I did not have a family, happily. Not that it did not affect other people adversely that were related to me, but it did. But as I have said, it's a choice. But in this latest phase, I knew the consequences of opposing a dictatorship while in the country. I knew that it would adversely affect my immediate family and my wider family indeed. And
do they try to talk you out of it?
Happily not. Because first, my wife, we met in the struggle. She herself is as convicted about what we are doing as I am. And our children, I think, having been brought up listening to the reasons why indeed we are doing what we are quite supportive. I'm happy and grateful that that is the case.
What did they say to you when they see these images of you on television being beaten up, being tear-gassed?
Oh, well, it's of course traumatic, and especially to my younger son, who is in a rather tender age. It is traumatic, I have absolutely no doubt, and I get feedback about sometimes negative effects on his schooling and so on and so forth. But overall, I think they have learned to cope with this situation. Certainly, they send me messages of sympathy.
But in the back of your mind, sir, do you say to yourself, this is a price worth paying, sacrificing my children, my family, for country?
Well, actually, it's not just sacrificing them. It is sacrificing also for them. Because let me tell you that if this situation is not changed, the kind of life that I have lived in Uganda is not the kind of life I would like them to live. I have told you that I have been tortured for doing nothing at all. Indeed, many people have lost their lives, not because they have done anything, because somebody just looks at them and does not like them, and they are dead. That's not the kind of country I would like them to live in, and certainly I don't think it's the kind of country they would want to live in. So yes, these sacrifices that maybe I choose to engage in have negative impact on them, but at the same time, it is for their good. And happily, they understand that, I think. But of course, it would be better if they didn't have to go through what they are going through.
You've called for a campaign of defiance. What does it even mean?
Well, the campaign of defiance, you see, is based on the background that we have a country, Uganda, which, since it was taken over by the British in the 1880s, the people of Uganda have been dominated, controlled by a few people, and there has been gross marginalization. Since independence in 1962, no leader of our country has ever handed over power peacefully to another. We are led and controlled by guns. And as a result of that, we have resources of our country serving just a few people who control state power. Today we have a government which, for example, is led by Mr. Museveni. His wife is the minister. His brother-in-law is the foreign minister. His brother is the one in charge of the economy, wealth creation, and whatever.
So to the question, what is your defiance call for? What is it about?
So the defiance call is to change power from a few to the citizens by overcoming the control and fear that comes with the guns that have been in charge of our country. And it takes three things. One, to free our minds of the slave mentality that comes with the domination over a long period. Because our people have been dominated over this period, they do not know what it takes to be a citizen and the responsibilities
mental freedom. That's
yes. Two, to have organizational tools that can help them to work together to defy the regime, to work together to say, no, we shall not cooperate with what you are doing, to deny cooperation to the dictatorship, and in that way to bring the dictatorship down. That is the defiance campaign that we are involved with.
Mr. Besigye, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us here at Focus on Africa.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Pleasure ours.